Um, I started making or uploaded a video about this story, and I had to take it down because this headline is very is misleading. This woman, whose name is Alexandra Hunt, is not a current candidate for Congress. She ran in the primaries against incumbent Democratic Representative Dwight Evans. Dwight Evans was and is the nominee, and presumably he'll be reelected to Congress. This is at Pennsylvania's 3rd District. I could do a lot more research on this. If this is the new seat or if it was completely redrawn or whatever. But he's probably a shoo-in to be reelected. But this Redux, the people there should have said, well, maybe they did. Maybe if I read it closely. No, she's not running. No, they're wrong. Anna Slatz should rewrite this article because Alexandra Hunt is not currently a candidate for Congress, and it says right here. She ran for election for the U.S. House to represent Pennsylvania's 3rd Congressional District. She lost in the Democratic primary on May 17th, 2022. So, anyway, it says here she has 2 graduate degrees, one from Drexel University and one from Temple University. And she's a public health researcher. She's done a lot of other things, too, including stripping. And this led to some, even though she's no longer a candidate for Congress, she made some outrageous statements on Twitter that were, frankly, very controversial. So, as I said, I did not note this in my first video on this topic, and I had to delete that video because it's just not accurate. She's not a current candidate. But the idea that anybody at all with any kind of political ambitions or anything would think there's a right to sex, it's disturbing as hell because sex is a want, it's a desire, it's not a need. For individuals, it's not a need. Okay, for society, quote unquote, society, in order to perpetuate itself, yeah, sex is a need for the society to perpetuate itself, but that's not. What should I say? It's not something that everybody has to do. Enough people do it, supposedly, by choice, and have kids in order to perpetuate society. But in terms of a right to it, no, there's no right, because the reason there is no right to it is to make something a right like this, it requires other people. And you can't do that, and it almost always the other person is a woman, and that woman, by this kind of logic, has no right to say no. And that's half the battle in women's rights. Half the battle is women wanting to be treated with dignity and respect and have a right to public space and participate in the world. That's half of it. And the other half is the right to say no to men's sexual demands. And this woman, who was clearly a joke candidate to begin with, because she did not win the primary, so she's not a current candidate, clearly was out of the mainstream. She made Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez look like a genius. So, anyway, she was talking about this dumb thing. She posted a thread to Twitter where she bemoaned the lack of sex young men are reportedly having and appeared to blame the criminalization of the sex trade for violence against women. Well, of course, prostitution is violence against women. You starve women in order to get them to the point where they feel like they have to do this. And men just think they have a right to buy a woman's body. So it's all violence against women. And so this former candidate for Congress is clearly a grandstander. I mean, clearly trying to draw attention to herself. And she's gotten a lot of attention. But she's been debunked on this because she used a particular study or whatever, and as David Futrell, and I bet you I don't have it. No, I don't. And I don't feel like looking it up. Oh yeah, here it is. And of course, he's pretty worthless now. He has that, we hunted the mammoth, and he would talk about MRAs critically, but now he's kind of swallowed the GI nonsense. But here he's talking about what she has said about the controversial Twitter thread, and he debunked it because this chart here is about men who haven't had sex in the last year. You know, that's not anything unusual. That under 30%, close to 30%, not a third. Actually, yeah, it's like 28% of men haven't. Whoop-de-doo, between 18 and 30. And have not. So, it's not a particularly worrisome statistic. You know, people have lives. It's not because they're incels here. It's because they're probably too busy. The same with women. But the guys who aren't getting laid, the incels, we've heard this story before with this nonsense about, what the hell was it called? About redistribution of sex, and old Jordan Peterson walked in there and was yakking about it, and we should have enforced monogamy and all this kind of crap, because women just are not human and don't have the right to say no. Now, the biggest reason, or one of the reasons, that women why these guys aren't getting laid, younger men, is because they're addicted to pornography. And pornography is poison. And it's much worse even than 50 years ago, which was bad enough. During the time when Deep Throat was all the big rage. And we know there that the quote-unquote star of that movie, Linda Borman, who was called Linda Loveless or Linda Lovelace, she did that. She was forced into making that movie. And it was totally believable because we know that trafficked women are doing pornography now, and young girls. So we know that. It's not like it should be unbelievable. But 70s propaganda, sexual liberation propaganda, has conned a lot of people into thinking this is, that women just choose this for fun when they're being assaulted on camera and they're having their bodies destroyed. And they're basically, it's paid rape. So she thinks, evidently Hunt thinks that, turning tricks is a viable option for women. Not her. Well, she did stripping, which is still degrading. Still a form of it. Still a form of prostitution without actually going all the way. Instead of abuse of women's rights. And anyway, so my point is, at 5 in the morning, redoing this video, is that it is not a right. There is no right to sex. There never will be a right to sex because you have to, both parties have to be able to say no. And you're saying that men have a right to women's bodies and women have no right to say no. And that's just not acceptable. But anyway, the good news is that this woman, contrary to Redux, which I will not put in the description, is because of the algorithm of YouTube has booted me out a couple of times, or has flagged me a couple of times. But the good news is that Hunt is not a current candidate. So I wanted to make that clear. So I had to re-record the earlier video. And anyway, that's it.